Did you know you can animate in Procreate? The animation toolbar is a game changer for animators and illustrators alike. Whether you're an illustrator wanting to learn the basics of animation, or a motion designer adding another program to your toolkit for animations on the go, keep watching to discover the full animation potential of Procreate. I'm Julia for Envato Tuts Plus, and I'm an illustrator, motion and graphic designer, and I use Procreate all the time for both professional and personal work. So let me show you my workflow. In this video, you'll learn how to navigate the Procreate animation toolbar, create and manage animation frames, and explore your animations for further editing or sharing right away. Let's get into it. So, we have opened up Procreate, and the first thing we want to do to get started on this animation is go up into this toolbar and turn on our animation assist, which you'll see this little toolbar has popped up down the bottom, which is going to be our way that we can easily kind of pan through all the different layers. And so you see that it has created this first frame, which we're going to start drawing our rough design for this character. So we have this idea to draw this little eggy character. Let's choose one of these brushes from up here. 6B pencil is usually a good one for a rough drawing. Let's make this a little bit smaller and bring the flow up a little bit. Cool. So let's start with this first frame, this little eggy character. Start with our little body. This kind of can be a little bit rough because we can go back and fix this later. This first step is kind of just about getting the feeling of the animation, starting to kind of carve out this personality. So maybe we can erase this, make sure our eraser is on something a bit chunkier so it's actually going to do its job. And kind of have this, maybe we can use this selection tool and kind of rotate this a little bit, have this be a little bit more of an extreme pose, because we want to kind of have the most extreme pose at the end. And because we're using this pose-to-pose method, we're going to go through and animate all of the most extreme poses and then fill in the gaps at the end. Cool, so that's looking pretty good. We've got our nice little character, we've got a body starting to appear. Let's go and add a new frame down the bottom here and have our character kind of bending down as the next main pose. And you can see that I've got under settings, I've got onion skins on. Might turn this down just to 1, so you can see only the onion skin frames on either side of the current drawing. So the onion skin is basically like a shadow of the animation, so you can see where you've gone in the animation and what's still coming up and kind of where you need to go, so you can see a complete picture of the animation as you're making it instead of drawing blind. Really helpful to make the onion skin colors a different color to the drawing that you're working on, so you can kind of get a bit of difference. So maybe let's make this an orange color, and we'll keep drawing in white so we get a bit of separation. So we are on the second frame. Maybe we can have this kind of a bit more squashed down. One of the nice animation principles is squash and stretch. So we want to have things squashing as they come down and stretching as they're kind of moving, and you're kind of playing with that exaggeration. So when he's kind of bending down, he gets flattened, and when he stands up, he stretches back out to a regular egg shape. We've got some little bends in the legs, and maybe his arms kind of come up, or maybe his arms can kind of flatten out a little bit. And he's holding his coffee. We can have some like coffee spilling out as he's coming up, and bring this across here. Bring a nice little smile, and we can kind of move on. Maybe let's change these onion skins so we can see the whole thing. This third frame, so I just added a new frame down here. This third frame, we can have him moving on the other side. So he has bent down, and now he's going over to the other side and drinking. And so he's had a little sip of coffee, he's got some energy, and now taking a little bite of the toast. Pretty much copying the same drawing as the first drawing, but on the other side. So we kind of want to make sure that we've got the same movement and the same kind of pose there with this little leg coming out like that. And with our onion skin frames on, we can kind of see where that other leg was, and we can match that baseline there. And because we can see these two different feet, we can actually see that this one has this feet has kind of come up a little bit higher. So let's go into our direct selection and we can bring this whole drawing down. And now we can see that all of the feet are at the same level. He's not jumping up into the air too much. So we've got a rough idea. Maybe he bends down again, so we can take this frame, if we tap on this bent down frame and we duplicate that frame and then tap and hold to move it to the end, we can kind of keep, he's going to bend down the same way. We don't need to redraw it just yet. And now let's play it and have a little look. Oh, that is very, very fast. Let's change this frames per second. It's kind of good to start when you're doing these rough animations on a really, really low frame rate, so you can kind of see it's not jumping too fast. And then as you're adding in more drawings, you can play around with different timings and keeping that, that motion a bit smoother. But for now, that is looking pretty good. Let's keep playing it. I think we should add a little bit maybe of more spice in the middle. It's a bit boring in my mind, just drinking coffee, bending down, eating toast. So maybe let's add a little spin in the middle here. And I might make these onion skin opacity a little bit higher and go in again and make sure that both of these onion skin frames are the same. We can make them slightly different colors, just so we can see what's going on a bit better. So let's come in here, change this back down to 1 again, and he's just bent down and we want him to now spring back up and kind of spin around. So we've gone from like a very squashed motion to a very, very stretched motion. So we're going to have this almost like a side profile of the egg in a spin. Maybe his little eggy legs. And he's got like an arm coming out this side and he's holding the little coffee here and his little toast over here. And you're kind of getting like the side profile of him in that moment. Always looking at it in the context. You don't want to get too caught up on the details and spend a lot of time perfecting this drawing only to watch it back and see that it doesn't fit into the rest of the motion. So that's cool, that's looking good to me. And what we're going to do now, we kind of have like a really, really basic animation. Now what we're going to do is go through and fill in all of the gaps and kind of add some more detail, add some more movement to fill out the motion of this. So let's add another frame in here. He's kind of, I'm going to imagine that he's squashed down, he's turning around, and we want another one where he's basically this, but flipped. So the same kind of squashed, eggy shape, except now his face is over here. And his arms, where would his arms be? This coffee cup has now spun around. It might actually be in the same spot. And we've got the toast over here. What does that look like? Kind of turn the onion skin frames off as well. And also down in this animation toolbar, if I want to kind of slowly get an idea, I can scrub across and see all of these in context as well, instead of tapping on individual ones. So let's add in some more detail. We want to add some more frames for the slower motion and less frames for the faster motion. So when this little egg is drinking his coffee, we can add in some more frames. Turn these onion skins back on so we can see what we're doing. Maybe let's have, we're kind of splitting the difference between this frame and this frame. So having him kind of coming down, I can select this and move it a little bit further down. And the arm is going from this bent position to flattening out. And it will be definitely nice to have the coffee kind of coming up from the cup there. And that leg starting to bend a little bit. And this leg kind of coming down onto the ground. Oops. Oh, we're getting some shading motion happening. So this leg is now coming down. And our face, maybe our face can get some stretch happening. Gone from a perfect circle to a little bit of a stretched shape. Cool, and then this This arm is coming up. And let's turn onion skin frames on. We can see how that is looking. Maybe we can move this face up and get a little bit more of a stretch happening. There's a lot of fiddling with frame by frame animation, but that is the beauty, and the reward is that you get a really kind of organic feeling motion at the end of it. Oh, and we forgot to add some little legs here. And we're going to make sure that we're adding the same frames on either side because we want a kind of even animation as well. So let's now split the difference between these two frames. We actually want this frame to be on the other side, so we're going to go drinking coffee, bending down, spin, bending down, eating toast. That's our kind of flow of the motion. So let's add another frame in between here. I kind of like turning the onion skin frames on and off just to kind of see. Sometimes the onion skin frames and the drawings and having lots of things can get quite messy. So it's nice to just like have a bit of a breather, have some clarity, see what we're working with, and then turning them back on to focus on the motion. So let's do some of this. We can bring back that stretch in the face and select that and kind of move that back up to make sure it's in the right spot. We can have this arm starting to bend up and a little piece of toast, a little janky piece of toast here. And we're going from this arm kind of like that, slowly coming down a little bit. We can see already the lengths of the arms are changing a little bit, so we can go through and make sure that they are all even as well when we start cleaning this animation up. And turn this off. We want to make sure that this frame here is about the same as this frame. They don't have to be totally perfect. We're not going for a beautiful, symmetrical, amazing animation. We want a little bit of personality still in there, so it doesn't need to be exactly perfect. And you can see now that the frame rate that we were working on before is a little bit slow, so we can't really see the movement. We can change this frames per second up a little bit and kind of see how we're going. Cool. So now we can see our idea before, it's not really looping, kind of like the idea of having a looping thing. So let's change this in settings to a ping pong motion, which basically means it's going to move along and then kind of ping pong back and forth instead of looping back to the start. I think is going to be nicer for this. Let's add in some more frames and fill this out a little bit more. Let's add another frame in here. And we can maybe have him actually sipping the coffee. We can have a bit of a slower motion, so not so extreme, where he's tipping the coffee into his mouth, getting that first sip of the day, and maybe like reaching up for it a little bit like that. And this body shape is kind of going to stay mostly the same. Maybe it shifts forward just a little bit. This leg can kind of hinge at the hip a little bit, and this leg can move out and balance a little bit further. Everything's just kind of like hinging a little bit, so you get this like very, if I just turn this off, you get this kind of like little motion, and it means it'll kind of pause on that as well. And let's add that to the other side as well. Have this face kind of coming forward, getting the first bite as well. You have to eat when you drink coffee, otherwise you'll get overly caffeinated. Like that. Have this coffee cup kind of coming out a little bit, this leg coming out a little bit. Cool, play that back, see how it looks. Another thing that we can do for these end frames, we're moving past it a little bit too quickly, but we don't really feel like drawing it for now. We can tap on here and change the hold duration to 1. And what that is basically going to do is add another frame that is identical without you having to like waste time in redrawing things just for this rough animation. So let's do that for both of these end frames. And I think as well, I want to add maybe another couple of frames in this middle to make that spin go for a little bit longer too. So maybe we can have a little moment like this, where you've kind of got the arms almost hidden by the body of this, and he's just having a little spin. Might actually be nice to have some pointed toes here, so let's add that into our motion. And we can go back to those frames that we had before where we had the flat feet and just go into the eraser and erase them off. So now we've got his bent down, goes up into tippy toes and spins around. So I'm just going to go through and fill out these drawings a little bit more, make sure that we're not getting this kind of steppy motion, and see where we're at after we've done that. Hey, also, have you heard of Envato Elements? Well, if you haven't, then let me tell you about them. One subscription gets you unlimited access to millions of creative assets that you can download and use in your projects right away. Things like video templates, stock footage, music, fonts, heaps more. If you're creating content for the internet, Elements is where you need to be. So check out the link in the description below. Cool, all right, so we have filled out that motion a little bit more. Let's play it back to see how it's looking. And I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. I think the frame rate is a good speed. We've kind of got that fast motion with the turn in the middle and the little pause at either end. So now we can get started on designing the real character and kind of going through this rough animation and doing the real thing. Time for the real thing. So I'm just gonna take these and make them regular frames and take off this hold for now. And we can go through and make this animation. So let's add a new frame. Because we're drawing just the one animation, we don't want to see both of these at the moment. So a good way to do this is to change the onion skin colors for the back frame to be something close to the background color. So you can still kind of see it, but it's not getting in the way of your drawing, and you can just focus on creating the real design for the frame that you want. So that looks good. Now we can just see the frame that we want. We can come up here. I've got a nice little breckie palette with an off-white egg color. And the brush that I want to use is this dry ink brush, which I think has a nice kind of texture to it. So now we're just going to go through and do the body for this egg a little bit more perfect than our rough animation. And we can still obviously change things, but this is where we're at right now. Then we can fill the shape using this color drop, and we can change the threshold to make sure that it's getting, when I pull the threshold all the way down, you can see the kind of edges starting to show. So if I pull it all the way up, it fills that shape out nicely. I think let's have this kind of shape like that. Almost like a flower egg. Cool. And we basically want these on a separate layer. We want to separate the egg body shape from the egg details because we're going to be adding texture to this egg shape in After Effects, and we don't want to add texture to the entire animation. Okay, so we've got our egg body on one layer. We're going to add another frame and just bring this to the front so we can see still the frame that we're drawing, and add the details onto this other layer. So this first frame is kind of like a style frame. We're just testing out how this egg is actually going to look. All right, so those details are looking pretty good to me. We've got these separated onto our two layers. Now what we're going to do is go up into our layer stack and group these three. So if I swipe across to the right, I can group our rough layer, our detail layer, and our body layer into a little group. And that will basically, you can kind of see that it's created a one single frame instead of treating these as 3 frames of the animation. So if I hide this rough layer, make sure that the detail layer is on top of the egg, and we're basically going to go through and do that for each of our rough layers. Cool, so let me do that now and I'll come back to you once I've finished. Cool, so I have gone through and drawn all of our little frames, and now we have an animation. It's looking really good. I think I'm really happy with this movement and the frame rate. I think we can add in a couple of little details, and we can, like the coffee falling out, and maybe a couple of little spinning lines just to exaggerate the motion a little bit more. And we can do that using a different method, the straight ahead method. We don't have to do the keyframes so much. We can just make sure that we are on this little detail layer, and maybe we'll start here. The coffee starts falling out. These projects can get quite complicated. So we just got the coffee, and I kind of don't mind that it's going back into the cup. It's coming out and going back in, and we can have some sloshing maybe down here. Open up all of these layers, have some drips coming out here as he's moving downwards. Just for a little bit of extra fun. We can see these in here. Cool, so when he comes and moves up, we can add some spinning lines in here. Starting from this side, moving around, open up that layer, we can kind of see that continuation of the line. We can draw each frame sequentially. And if we can't kind of see as we get to this frame here, we can't really see the line before, we can just hide the egg body layer, and now we can see this line a little bit clearer. Cool, I'm really happy with how that is looking. So the next step is to export this and get it into After Effects. And for that, we basically need to go through each one of these groups and make sure that all of these rough animations are turned off, knowingly moving all of these drawings out of their groups, so the animation will no longer play down here. So basically, we want to make sure that we're really happy with the movement here before we get into this next step and moving it across. So let's make sure all of these groups are open, expanded. There's a sneaky one, and we can select all of these. So you're just swiping right across, selecting all of these real animation drawings, none of the rough ones. Cool, and then we can tap and maybe move them above. Awesome. So you'll kind of see this gets a bit broken now that we've all separated these out. When we go up into the settings and click share PNG files, it will export them all separately. And so we'll now bring this into After Effects. All right, so we've exported the PNG sequences from Procreate and airdropped them and gotten them over to the computer, and basically just renamed these two sections so that After Effects can treat them as two PNG sequences. So we've got these body layers and we have the detail layers. So now if we go into After Effects and hit Command-I to import, we can select all of these together and come down here into this setting that says multiple sequences. And if we click open, you can see that it's created two different sequences, one for the egg body and one for the details. And if we drag it down to the bottom, it'll create a composition from the PNG sequence, and we can play it and you can see it's way faster than we originally had it. It's a bit manic, way too much coffee. And basically what we need to do is go up to each of these sequences and hit right click, interpret footage, main, and then make sure that this frame rate is the same as our Procreate animation. So it was 8 frames per second, and we can do this for both of these PNG sequences. And now if let's make a new composition and we'll call this egg with legs. Match all these settings to the original Procreate file and click OK, and we can drag these down to our composition, make sure our body is behind the details and play it, and it's now at the speed that we chose it. We can always, if we're not happy with the speed, we can still make some adjustments in After Effects too. So let's cut the the timeline here with N. Go back 1, N here. And now we have a looping animation, but the setting from the ping pong effect in Procreate hasn't come across. So maybe we need to make this double the length of the composition. Now let's pre-compose these, and so we've got them all in the same file, egg, and maybe let's duplicate this. We can hit open square bracket and then go right click, time reverse layer, and that will reverse it. So we kind of have this same, we've looped it, so we don't need to make any adjustments. It'll just perfectly loop. Make sure that this out point is exactly where we want it to be, play it through, and we've got some breakfast happening. So now we can add obviously these will come across as transparent PNGs. All right, let's hit Command Y to create a background layer for our egg. Doesn't need to be exactly the same as the Procreate file, but something around there looks good to me. And drag that down to the bottom. That's basically where we were when we exported from Procreate. So if we wanted to export straight from Procreate, we would end up something like this. But we've brought it into After Effects to add some texture and to add some things that we wouldn't be able to get from Procreate. So let's go into our egg composition. Let's add some textures to this egg now. We separated these into 2 different sections, so we can add texture just to this body layer. If I solo that, we can make sure that nothing else is in there. That's good. And maybe let's just lock this detail layer for now so we don't shift it around. Let's make a copy of this body layer with Command D. And on this bottom copy, let's put a fill in there with the effect panel up here. And I want to make this fill the same yellow that we have on the egg yolk. Make sure that that's happened. Cool, awesome. On this top layer, this can stay as white, and let's add a blur. The idea is we want to get this kind of nice grainy effect, so bear with me through this process. Let's chunk this up to something like that, and we start getting this kind of nice outline area. Now that we've added this nice kind of blur effect, we can change the blending mode to this dancing dissolve, and that is going to immediately make this kind of very, very cool. If I just zoom in, this cool pixely effect, kind of like a grain. Let's make another copy of this egg shape, and we can get rid of this blur effect and change this back to normal, and then basically treat this layer as that track matte. So go down here, make it into a track matte, and then we can kind of see the vibe of the effect. We can play around with all these settings to make sure that it's all looking the way that we want. So maybe we can have some more blur and have more of that yellow edge come through. I don't know how you like your eggs cooked. That looks pretty good. It's still looking a little bit pixely and less like a purposeful texture and more like a mistake. So we can add an adjustment layer in here. I always forget the shortcut for the adjustment layer because there's too many. But let's put that in here, and we can add a turbulent displace. And that looks pretty whack, but if we turn down the settings to something really low and change this size to something really low, what you can see when you zoom in is that it just kind of softens the effect a little bit and makes it a little bit less pixely. We've got some texture happening. So we could have done this all in Procreate. It would have been very permanent because you have to go into each of the egg layers. So that's why we bring it into After Effects to have a bit more control and play around with the settings some more. All right, let's go back onto our main comp and see how that's looking with our background. And I think let's add some texture to this background as well, so it matches this kind of handmade effect. It's looking a little bit flat. Let's go down to our solid and add a grain effect down here. Let's change this to final output so we can see what we're working with. Cool, so now we can play around with some of these settings and get this. I kind of like to zoom in at this point to see what we're working with a little bit better. Maybe something like this. The size, we can kind of go down a little bit, match the size of our egg effect, and softness all the way down so we get this noisy thing, this noisy effect happening. Let's make this monochromatic as well so we get less of that colored noise. Cool. And I think the rest of those settings look pretty good to me. Maybe we can make this blending mode as well. Maybe let's make this multiply and see what it looks, so it's a little bit less harsh, a little bit more backgroundy. The final thing that we want to do for this solid is add a posturized time and match that same frame rate. Important, want to make sure that it's above the grain so that this grain is acting at the same time as the frame by frame animation. So they all look like they're from the same universe. So there we go. We have a little looping, eggy, breakfasty person. It turns out Procreate is for much more than just illustrating. Let me know in the comments how you animate with Procreate. I would love to hear about it. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, consider subscribing for more. Happy animating!